watching and listening to Bishop Brothers, a safe space where real issues being dealt with by real people are brought forth and discussed. Every week, the fire of love is lit as two 21st century bishops share the first century church message. Join and engage in the conversation, featuring grassroots interviews, book reviews, and God-inspired commentary. Here are your hosts, Aaron and John, Bishop and Bishop, Chief and Chief. But above all, they are brothers. Welcome aboard.
All right. Back at it.
Back at it again.
Another Ask the Brothers segment.
That's right.
Yeah.
You see, I'm frozen on the camera right there.
Okay.
All right. Well, I assure you I'm not frozen. But how was your week this week?
It was good. Yeah, it was good. And,
Good.
you know, just can't complain. I could complain because folks say it's a waste of time anyway. So
That's true. That's very
just
true.
glad to be here in the land of the living, health and strength, and keep moving.
Yeah. So it's Ask the Brothers tonight, and we got some pretty good questions tonight. I'll lead it off with this first one since we can actually see you. So the first question we have tonight, and this is a good one. Should pastors keep confessions to themselves even if a crime has been committed?
Yeah, and what I wanted to read the question. Look at that question.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I like to just really meditate on the question. Should pastors keep confession to themselves even if crimes are committed? This is on the backdrop of the state of Arizona. Arizona decision, Supreme Court of Arizona. Here's the backdrop. It says the Arizona Supreme Court has handed down one of the most discussed decisions possible. The court ruled that the Mormon Church can refuse to answer questions or turn over documents under state law that exempts religious officials from having to report child sex abuse if they learn of a crime in a professional setting. Now, I want to answer that like this. You know I'm a teacher.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure, like I said, I'm not licensed in Arizona, but I'm pretty sure they have teachers in Arizona. I think I can walk on safe ground with that. Because when you make an argument, you want to make sure it's legitimate. But I'm pretty sure they have teachers in Arizona teaching children, right? So you can go to a church and you can report a crime with sexual abuse of a child to a pastor, and that pastor has the legal protection to not report that crime. Yet a school in Arizona, I'm pretty sure, I said Texas, if the same crime would be reported to a teacher and they withheld it, right, and they found out it was withheld, they should be under the jail. Well, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Right.
What are we doing in this society where we don't protect children in the places that they need to be protected at, and that is in the church? And so, should pastors keep confessions even if a crime has been committed? I mean, if we do that, then what are we doing in society?
Right.
What are we doing in society? What is society saying?
Right.
So on no certain terms, crimes are a violation of law.
Mm-hmm.
In many cases, a violation of morality. This is a moral sin, a moral law violation, human law violation, everything. What does confessing have to do with reporting a crime?
Right.
They can confess all they want to,
Mm-hmm.
but if society don't take care of the individual, then the individual will continue to do crime. Then our law is meaningless anyway.
Right.
Laws got a moral code, human code, and a God. They got to square all these codes. So we just letting people be lawless, and they go to the church and be lawless, and pastors are covered on their lawlessness. Then what are we doing? So this goes without, in my opinion, goes without a question. That yes, your clergy or pastoral or apostle that's not confidentiality.
Right.
That is reporting the crime. Again,
Right.
the teacher scenario. If a kid come to me today and said he or she was abused last night,
Mm-hmm.
I'm mandated under the law.
That's right.
Before that, I don't need, for me personally, I don't need that mandate under the law.
Right.
I'm going to do, but you create laws because people will do that. So
Right.
it can happen here, and these people are held accountable to the law. I have to report.
Right.
My principal, my administrator, the district, nobody in my chain of command, they're irrelevant.
Right.
I have to report to the state of Texas, in my case.
Mm-hmm.
That is that. No, if I don't report it and it's found out, I can be held punishable under the law. It's cut and dry. I can't. There's no defense of I told my principal. There's no defense that I told a counselor. There's no defense that I told a friend. There's no defense that's come. I understand. I have to report to the state. I keep reading because people don't understand that. They think, oh, you take principal. No. Even if I tell my principal, I still have to report, and my district can't do no retaliation against me. They can't send it again because I am a mandated reporter. So we go to the schoolhouse. Now we go to the church house, and well, it stops there because they're in a building with a steeple on it, and they have a pastor collar on, and so we report a crime of a child's abuse or a crime against a child's situation. So they're 100 because they got a collar on.
Yeah.
Then the collar is useless.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, probably the part that irritates me the most is this idea that somehow confession is some sort of like sacred place where you can just talk about all these horrible things you've done and are continuing to do, and without consequence, right? You know, for me, you know, I get asked this a lot. Well, you know, what are your rules when it comes to confession? And I think that's a fair question. And I think all pastors really should answer that question for themselves. If you think about going into ministry, you are going to run into people who do this type of stuff. It's going to happen. So, you know, for me, so here's my ground rules. My ground rules are really simple. Children are off limits. And what I mean by that is if you tell me you've abused a child, I am going to tell on you. I don't care if you did it yesterday. I don't care if you did it 20 years ago. If that comes up, I feel like I have to tell someone. Now, we talk about serious offenses against others when we're not talking about children. So this is true for me both in counseling and as a pastor, right? So as a pastor, I would say I will, if you tell me you killed someone 10 years ago, I don't feel obligated to go tell the police that. If you tell me you're going to kill someone when we're done, I'm absolutely going to call the police. So those are my personal rules. Technically, like in Arizona, apparently I can say whatever I want, and you know, that'll be that. But for me personally, I don't tolerate, especially with children. With me, children, it's a protected group, a protected class, and I'm absolutely 100% going to tell on you if you tell me. So,
for me, and this gets standard, but for me, I'm not comfortable not reporting any type of crime. That's just me. I mean, unless you told me, you know, Bishop, I was 10 years old and I stole a Snickers out of HB. I'm not telling that. We'll get over that. But I guess I need to in my mind, crimes against, like you said, serious offenses against persons
Yeah.
that hadn't been adjudicated in the court of law, or that you're confessing to me, because and here's the difference, I am not your attorney.
Yeah.
I'm in a pastoral position.
Right.
As a pastoral position, I have protections because you might say things to me that is need to be held in confidence. I firmly believe in confidence.
Right.
However, when a crime has happened, such as let's go from children, spousal abuse is another big one. Those type of violence, crime, those are very tricky too, because church have behind that too with the marital situation. Yes, husband, you can rape your wife.
Fact.
See, and so we got to be. This is so broad, and my thing is when we start this slippery slope of saying I'm covered on the confessional thing because they're confessing to me, and I'm going to invoke my privilege as a pastor. We got to be very careful with that because it's slippery slope that people will use
Right.
to get things off the chest and confess things and say, "Oh, you can't go and tell on me."
Right.
Attorney, well, a lot of people don't realize attorney-client privilege is very different than clergy-client privilege. It's a different with distinction.
Yep.
An attorney is defending you against court of law, and in our Constitution we have things called Bill of Rights. You have right against self-incrimination. So when you're talking to your attorney, you have that right. That's still right. But when you are confessing to me, particularly incriminating things, it's not my role to incriminate you or to penalize you, but it's my role to insert things to express that I got to tell somebody you committed this act because it is it's a crime against society. And so it's a slippery slope. To me, this decision is like attorney-client privilege. Well, you don't have to tell nothing your client says because it's a legal status thing, whereas clergy should cover more under the moral authority of which situation. So when crimes report to clergy, that's the moral authority. So what are we going to do?
And you know, for me, a lot of every situation is different. For me, if you're confessing about something that isn't going to bring harm to someone, I'm more than willing to hear you out. We can keep that. You know, you tell me, Pastor, I got a porn addiction. I'm not going to go run and tell everybody you do that. If you tell me, Pastor, I have an addiction to child pornography, I'm absolutely going to tell you. See how it's the same thing. No, it's not the same. Right? And I know, people don't like to hear the word porn, especially when we're talking about Christian stuff, but the reality is it's out there. And here's something you need to understand about this particular issue, pornography, right? Pornography, by definition, has to be consensual. If you are watching something and someone is too young to consent or can't consent or is being abused, that is not pornography. That is videotape evidence of a crime, right? So I know, because I know this because I've lived this. Well, Pastor, you said you wouldn't tell anybody I had a porn problem. No, you're right, I did. But when you told me you like to watch evidence of a crime, that's different. I'm sorry, it's different. There is a victim in child pornography, right? So for me, it's the same issue, but it's different. It's not the same. It's very similar if you tell me, when I was a teenager, I hit a guy with a car. I don't know if he died, but we hit him and we ran. Okay, honestly, I can hold that. I'm comfortable holding that. If it happened 10, 15 years ago, if you tell me when I get home I'm going to kill my wife, I'm calling the police. Well, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's different, and there's a living victim right now. And so for me, that's where I've drawn my lines. I think every pastor needs to find their lines and draw them, and you need to be open and honest with people who are quote unquote confessing to you so that they understand where you stand. Because I do think it's inappropriate if you promise someone you won't say anything and then you go and say something, right? You need to be open and honest about the fact that you will tell on them, right? Like, I have no problem telling people when they want to talk about sin, like, okay, if you're going to tell me you stole cookies when you were a kid, or If you're going to tell me you're having marital problems, I'll listen to that. I'll keep that here. But if you're going to confess to me that you have abused your child in any way, there's a crime with an active victim, and I feel that I am bound to tell on you. There's nothing in the Bible that says I can't tell on you if you commit a crime. It actually encourages us to seek justice. Yeah. So, that's just where I stand on that.
And it shouldn't be in line with kids.
Yeah,
kids, it should be no. It should okay. If you sit and promise that, then you just setting yourself up for disaster.
Yep, you really are.
Yeah, it shouldn't be like you said. It shouldn't be anything you say is going to say no. Don't say that because you're setting yourself up for disaster.
Yeah, no, really good question and really timely right now, especially with what's going on in Arizona and a lot of places. Yeah. A lot of places are having this issue right now. Next question. Does God control everything that happens in my life? And so, I don't know. Sometimes, when we get these questions, I don't know if they're trying to do the bait and switch and trying to corner you, or if they're really asking, does God actually control everything in my life? So, I have a kind of a convoluted, not straight answer for you. So the answer is yes. I do believe that God has control over everything. I also believe in agency, right? One of the ways God shows control is by giving us agency to make our own decisions. Here's how that comes into play. This is typically how it happens for me. Pastor, my marriage is in the toilet. I'm sick of, my wife treats me like crap, blah, blah, blah. I keep asking God to fix it, and He ain't fixing it, and this is just unacceptable. But then I'll ask Him, okay, well, describe a typical date with your wife. We haven't been on a date in 5 years. Okay, is that God's fault? Did God decide? Did God control that and say, "Thou shalt not go on a date"? No, you made that decision. So there's a balance between God. Yes, God does have control, but I think one of the blessings that God has given us is agency. So we do have the agency to control things in our lives. If I don't go to work and I get fired, that's not God's fault. That's my fault. I had the agency to choose to go to work or not. Right? The only thing I would say about this question for me, and I want to get your take on it, is we have to be careful with this question because, especially pastors, when you answer this. So pastors, when you answer this and you say, yes, God controls everything, period, right? Then what you've kind of done is you've given this person license, right? Because this has actually come up in some of its worst outcomes. It's come up with like a serial murder. God made me this way, and that's why I'm killing people. And I don't believe that. You have agency. You didn't have to go out there and stalk them people, find them, and kill them. Right? God didn't control that situation and make you do that. Right? You had agency, and you chose to do that. So we have to be careful when we answer these types of questions in absolutes. We just have to be careful with that.
Yeah. This is a difficult one. Here's the way I put it. It says, does God control everything that happens in my life? Well, you got a distinction between God controlling or being in control. That's a different distinction for me. God is in control of everything, but does God control everything? No, God is not controlling because of agency, like you said, free will. That if I go take my car and ram it into my house,
right?
Because God would tell me if He was in total control, advise me not to do that,
right?
So I have agency to make. So again, control or in control. I'm in control of my phone because it doesn't do nothing without my command. It's like you have a newborn baby. People say, when the baby was newborn, I was in control of the baby. Well, were you? Okay, then you were in control, right? Well, yeah, I was. Really, you wasn't, because when the baby wanted to cry, they didn't get your permission.
That's right.
It cried from a natural instinct.
Right.
Hunger, I'm wet, whatever.
Right. Whatever it is.
The baby cried.
Yeah.
So you were in control physically, because obviously a 2-day-old baby can make nothing without somebody doing something.
Right.
But when that baby cried, whimpered, that baby was telling us at the way they can communicate at that point in their lives,
Right.
that they needed something.
Yep.
And so you got to understand agency, like free will. God gives us a free will, and that's a sort of relinquishment of control.
Right.
When you have a free will. But could God control it? Yes, because if God was in control of how we define control of everything, it'd be like this phone sitting here, and this phone would never do anything unless I did something, and we're not like that.
Right.
We do things outside of a being of God telling us what to do. Where this phone is not going to do anything
Right.
until I do this and pick it up. It's not going to pick it. I'm thinking pick yourself up. It's like I still got to do something. So
Right.
control and in control is two different things, and
Right.
this is dangerous because I heard the cross say, "Oh, God's in controls everything." Well,
Yeah.
you got to be careful with that because in the criminal world, well, I was born this way.
Right.
I couldn't help myself. I did this. I've heard that with molesters, with children.
Right.
You got to be careful when you just nothing like it. We have agency. We make free will decisions that God allows us to do.
Yeah.
And if it was a total control thing, we'll always do right because then
Right.
we know God don't do us to do bad or wrong. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's probably where, and I like your distinction. There's a difference between being in control and controlling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. God is absolutely in control,
Right.
right? There's, I always tell people nothing occurs to God.
Oh, right.
Right.
He's
Like
not surprised.
Yeah. Has it ever occurred to you that nothing occurs to God?
Right.
Wow. Yeah. But God is not controlling, because if God was controlling, we'd be robots, right? We would
So
just do
then-
whatever we wanted with no agency,
No agency.
right?
Which
Which is not how we were created. We were created with agency.
Right.
Thank God, right? Now, with that agency comes choice, and with that choice can
Yes.
come bad choices,
you're right.
right? But you cannot say that your bad choices are because of God.
Right.
Your bad choices are choices because you made bad choices.
Right.
So, there's that part as well.
That's right.
So, all right. So, next question, it kind of goes hand in hand with this one. It says, does God know everything? And to me, this answer is a little more simple. The answer is yes. God knows everything, right? He knows the outcomes. He knows. I've always explained it like this. I've always explained it like a parade. And if you were in the Goodyear blimp and you were looking down on a parade and you could see yourself in the middle, right? In the middle as the parade's going by, you're in the crowd. Now, you have seen what already showed up, what already went through, like battle flowers or whatever. You've already seen those. You know what's in front of you, and you don't know what's coming next, right? Because you can only see your part of the thing. And I think that's how humans are with time and things. God sits in a Goodyear blimp. God knows the past, the present, and the future, right? So this might be a hard concept for some people to understand, but I believe in the omnipresence of God is not arrested by space and time. And what I mean by that is God is physically present in the past. God is physically present right now. And God is physically present in the future, because time is a construct that doesn't apply to a God that doesn't exist inside space and time. Space and time exists because God exists. So for me, the simple answer is yes.
Yeah. It's just does God control everything? I mean, yes, because He's God. He's not a He. It's God. God is God. So we have to deal with it on that level. So yeah, that's pretty easy. Man.
Yeah, that's not a. Thanks for the softball. And this one kind of goes into the other ones. What causes God to intervene in earthly affairs? So we have. I don't know, for me personally, I think I have examples in my own life, right, where it's very clear in some situation that God has intervened in some way. As far as what causes God to intervene, my answer would be God causes God to intervene, right? Because God has agency as well, and God decides how to intervene. But I think we kind of have to get away from this concept that God kind of sits outside the box and just kind of waits and like sticks his hand in and fixes things as if, you know, we're like a play set where, you know, he moves things when, you know, at certain moments. I don't see God as that outside. I see God as, like I just said, fully present in everything. And so the fact that I'm taking in air right now, for me, is an intervention of God. The fact that the lights are on, the fact that, you know, all of this, everything that's occurring around me is an intervention of God, because nothing can operate apart from God. So, but that's also you know, maybe my view of God and how I've understood the God of the Bible. So, you know, other people may have different opinions, but for me, God doesn't just show up and intervene. God is always there. Now, there have been times where it's miraculous, right? The crucifixion, the resurrection, you know, people getting out of prison during the Roman times. Sure, the miraculous occurs, but to me, God is always present.
Yeah, that's, if you're omnipresent, he's always present. So it's hard to correlate intervention with God when he's always there. You can't intervene unless it's, you know, when I go to domestic violence, then the police are intervening because now we got to come in because we wasn't there when it went down. So we got to come in and intervene with the situation. That means I'm inserting myself. Right. This is God's earth. He created. He can't intervene because he's always present.
Right.
He never leaves the presence. So the situation. So he's always in the affairs of men. Now if you're talking about manifestation, now you're talking about something different.
It's different.
How does he manifest himself? And we have a discussion about that. But as far as intervening, he can't be omnipresent and not present.
Right. Exactly.
You can't. You know, I'm gonna take this. You can't turn the lights down low enough. God can see in the dark, people. I know it's heartbreaking for some of you, but yes, God can see in the dark. It doesn't matter how low you turn the lights out. You know, God is there. He's always there. He's not saying, okay, I'm gonna look in here. He's everywhere, all the time, every place. So he can't intervene because intervention means you again inserting yourself into a situation where he's already in the situation.
Exactly. Yeah. So there is no, to me, there's no inserting of God. God's already there. Right. And actually, if you want to get technical, I guess the way I would look at it is we insert ourselves into God's.
And I know what people are saying right now. Well, if God's over that, why does he allow? This is good.
This is very good.
Because he's present, right? So that's the argument. Because I know what the argument is.
Yeah.
Because I've thought it.
I know where I'm going. I know where I'm going.
Why does child abuse happen? Because agency of men. Again, it goes back to in control and control.
Right.
Men, the people who I should just say men, because people who are doing that are using their own agency to violate the laws of God. Yep. And because we're in a free will dispensation right now, I don't reach God because that's dangerous. It's not like God allowed it. Agency is happening, and it's happening because we're not robots. If we were robots, God this is what we're talking about. The being God, he's not a he or she, but the being God decides to operate this way, and this is how this is very technical detail. This is how he operates. He operates with man on a free will basis. Right. He can control God can control everything. Right. But he does not, because that's how he created the earth, not to control, to give us agency based on how he wants us to deal with him. So control and in control. Because I know people saying, well, why does God allow slavery? Why does God allow abuse to happen? Is he allowing it? Or does man make no decision based on the agency? Right. So he's still present in these situations.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and, you know, to be honest with you, I mean, man, I certainly remember a time when I would be like, you know, like an argument I used to use all the time is, well, you know, would you rather be a robot and have God not only allow you to do what God wants you to do, or would you want slavery in this in exchange for your agency? And I think that kind of puts us, I don't know, to me that kind of makes me think, well, do I have to be okay with slavery and not want slavery at the same time? Like, it's kind of the argument you're bringing. The beauty of where I'm at with my faith is I can say I don't know, and I can be comfortable in that. I know God is in control, right? I know God is not controlling. I do know that I have agency because I make mistakes all the time, right? And God doesn't stop it from happening. I guarantee you, if I go jump off this balcony, God's not going to stop me from breaking my legs, right? The laws of gravity are going to take over. Or dying, right?
Yeah, right.
So, for me, I am very comfortable with saying I truly don't know why God is working the way that God is working right now. But I'm comfortable with that because it opens me up. I now have to wrestle with slavery. I now have to wrestle with racial disparity. I now have to wrestle with gun violence. I have to wrestle with all these things. When you do it's all in God's plan, when you play that game, you get to put yourself in a theological bubble and you don't have to be affected by these things. See, now that I'm no longer in that bubble, I have to feel these things and this rage and this hurt and this pain. But I think that's part of agency, right? So for me, I'm comfortable saying, I don't know why God allows this stuff to happen when he could just take it away. I don't know, right? But what I do know is I have the agency to change the things around me. And I think if Christians would do that and focus on their agency and what they can fix around them, I think we'd be in a much better place.
Can I say this? This is why I love this answer, brother, because, see, this makes us work.
Yes.
The worst theologian is the lazy theologian.
Amen.
The worst preacher is the lazy preacher. Because everybody wants to say these quick, tropish, cliches answers about to make people feel a certain way because they don't understand. And they don't want to say what you just said. I don't know. I don't understand. But it's okay to not understand.
Yeah.
God chose to work the way God works because God was God and we're not.
Right.
And so we got to help people through these process and try to, instead of trying to get people lazy, non-biblical, non-scriptural, ungodly answers, because that's what we heard, and this makes people feel good, and then people stay in the conundrum of lies because we're lying, because we really don't know, but we don't have the courage and the integrity to say that. I don't know why. Think God allowed. Right now it's happening. Let's just be real. Let's have our conversation. Right now, a child has been abused.
Yep. Someone's dying.
Man, you're not present.
Right.
Because it would happen. We'll stop it. But God is there.
And he ain't stopping it.
So we got to deal with this.
Right.
So this is why when we get information, going back to confession, we got to do something about it because we rarely get to do these things. But it speaks to, we don't know. God is God, and I don't know the answer. And we got to have the courage to say that.
That's right.
Because that's why we suffer with integrity now, because we lie to people, and when we don't know.
Yep. And we create in our churches, we create this false sense of security that the Bible. This is irritating to me.
Well, it wouldn't happen if God wanted to happen.
Yeah.
You gonna tell somebody less than that?
Exactly.
That's your answer.
Yeah, that's what
Think
you're going
about
with.
That's your answer. You gonna tell a grown up now? Well, sister, your molestation was because that was in the plan of God. You really? That's what we saying.
Right.
Guess what? We said that.
I've literally had people tell, or I've observed other biblical counselors. By the way, that's not a certification. Go get you a real counselor. I've seen biblical counselors say things to an abused woman, literally said, well, this was God's design. You wouldn't be the person you are today if you wouldn't have gone through this adversity. Wow. And I'm sitting back there and I'm thinking, you're damn right you wouldn't be this person. You wouldn't be this person with all this emotional baggage and this trauma and this mistrust. And you're right.
This is not a football
But that is horribly wrong.
It's not a football team trying to win a championship.
Exactly.
Trying to get through adversity of it. No, this is a life.
Right.
And God didn't ordain that.
Right.
God did not endorse anybody her suffering.
Exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty wild. So all that to say this: if you're seeing a biblical counselor, go get you someone with an actual certification.
Yeah.
That's not a certification. I think we've been asked this question before. We'll hit it real quick. Did God really create the world in 7 days? Well, again, this is why I love where I'm at faith-wise. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Right? I would say that the biblical argument, you could argue for either one, right? The Bible is clear that there were 7 steps in creation. No argument there. You could read that and say, yep, it happened in 7 physical days. And guess what? You can still be a Christian. You could be a weirdo like me and believe in what's called day-age theory, that each of those days represents millions of years. And you can still be biblical, right? In the end, when people ask me these kinds of questions, in the end, what I say is, what bearing if we 100% knew the answer one way or the other, what bearing would that have on sick people, hurting people, starving people, abused people, people we've been called to help? So while we sit here and we debate and argue these things, people are starving to death when we could be the hands and feet.
Yeah. I ask him when I get there. So
Yeah.
that's my answer.
So, yep. This is an interesting one. How come the age of miracles has ended? I've heard about this in Pentecostal circles, the idea that there was an age of miracles and that has ended, and that's why we don't have like water to wine anymore, or we don't have lepers, I would say this, at least if you're saying the miracles have ended, at least you're not on the Benny Hinn wagon with the magical coats and all that. So, congratulations. But to me, I think we got to look at what a miracle actually is. While we look for the water to wine, raising of the dead, the blind seeing, the lame walking, when are we going to acknowledge the miracles that happen in the everyday? A mom that works 2 jobs and still makes time to go to her son's basketball game. That's a miracle, right? Or, someone who's, sick in the hospital, can't afford the surgery, and friends and family come around, they raise the money, and they get to have the surgery, right? That's a miracle, right? So we focus on these like really magical things that we want to happen. People, this is the one that irritates me. If God would just show me something, I would believe. And I think that's false, because God is showing you stuff every day. Every day,
You don't play God to see for him to perform for you too. So
Right.
Hope you know that, right? He's not performing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, miracle on command.
Exactly.
Sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, but just,
and when miracles like that occur in the Bible, this is what I used to tell my seminary students. Miracles as described in the Bible, the things we would think of when we think of the term miracle, they're rare even by biblical standards, right? If you think of how many stories are in the Bible, very few of them are miracle based, right? And so usually when miracles occur, there's a lesson to be learned, something about God that needs to be taught that people just aren't going to get without this miraculous move, right? I don't think we're out of the age of miracle. I think miracles happen every day. We just want the performative miracles. We don't want to see miracles for what they are.
This is a good one for me because I'm a talk. It's going to sound crazy how I'm approach this miracle thing. And last year, House of the Dragon. I'm sitting there watching the episode, and it got to the end, and we've talked about the birthing scene.
Yeah.
But ever since that moment, and I think about this all the time now, since that scene happened, and this time I'm not talking about her agency on this one. I'm talking about how we're talking about a miracle. How I used to hear when I was younger. It's been on me since I watched the episode and haven't left me. The miracle of birth.
Yeah.
And that hit home to me because of what happened to her. But it reminded me how a birth is a miracle. Yeah. And we've made it minor. Right. My point is, my message, hope y'all put it in, just because we made things minor don't mean they're still not miracles.
That's right. Yeah.
We just made, in the age of this updated 21st century medicine, we've made this thing of a miracle of birth. But in medieval time, a birth was a miracle.
That's right.
Because the birth, the mortality rate was so high, it was a miracle for a baby to be born. It was a miracle to the whole process and stuff like that. And so, what is a miracle? How do we define miracle? Pardon the Red Sea. What are you talking about? And so, I think we have glamorized these things to what we think in our mind, but miracles happen every day. Just because they're not defined as miracles now. And I want to make a point of, I think while we're in the age of where we're at right now, let me ask you, what is a school of signs and wonders?
A school? I'm sorry, you caught me off guard.
A school.
What?
A school of signs and wonders. See, I see all this other stuff. So we need to go to school to now we're going to incant and force and determine miracles because you go to where do people go to school for? You having a school See, this money. This is all about money.
Mm-hmm.
Because they got an audience, because, back to what you said, you want to see something.
Right.
We judge God on performative.
Yep.
And God doesn't perform for us. But that's what,
Yep.
A school for signs and wonder. Because the Bible I read says a wicked and perverse generation. I don't need a sign from God.
Right.
I know inherently by me being here is a miracle.
Yeah.
Well, I got to keep myself reminded of it.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote in my memoir how I was stuck to my mom and that process. That's why going to House Dragon, because I remember when I watched her, it reminded my grandma telling me how it was touch and go for you and your mom there because you was actually stuck to her.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a miracle. So therefore, I'll always be a miracle.
Exactly.
I don't need to see one. But
I am one.
What
yeah.
school we have in schools for signs and wonders because we want to see God perform.
Right.
And God is not like going to the show. He's not going to perform for us.
Right.
Just to perform for us. He did that at the Red Sea. God did the Red Sea because that was needed at the moment. It wasn't my performing. Oh, the Pharaoh, what we do? No.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're at.
Yeah.
A school for signs. What is that?
Yeah. What are we doing? And for me, like one of the things I've always told, when we talk about miracles, we did my family tree, and we're very blessed to be able to go back. I mean, we can get our family tree back to Middle Scotland in the 1200s. I mean, we can go way back. But I've seen, in looking at my genealogy, there have been 4 instances where the father of the child died before the child was born, which tells me just how close I was to not existing. Right, 4 times. Right, the most recent one was in the 1840s, where the day of death for the father was 15 days after. So the kid was 15 days old, or when born. Right, the dad lived 15 more days. That close to the rest of that line no longer existing. Right, the fact that I'm here and that you're here. If you go back and you just look at our genealogies and what our respective people went through for us to be sitting here right now, how's that not a miracle? To me, that is a miracle. All of that, the whole genealogy is miraculous, right? And so, I don't know. You can sit here and wait for your water to wine, but I look in the mirror and I know miracles. I know God's real, right?
That's right.
So that's just kind of where I sit on it.
And the age of miracles. I rely about a lot of ages. The age of this, the age of enlightenment. But I haven't read about the
right.
At the end.
I didn't know they had a beginning and an end time.
Yeah, I don't know what's the age of.
So I actually had to go do some research on this because I'm not a Pentecostal. I'm not an Age of Miracles person.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying all Pentecostals believe this. I'm just saying this. That's where I typically found it. And the Age of Miracles is basically from Jesus back. So basically biblical miracles, and that's why nothing has occurred. Or they're called like cessationists, and they believe that that's kind of ceased. Like tongues was like one of the last miracles, and there's no more miracles. But for me, I think we still live in an age of miracles. There's still people today that go into the hospital with cancer and leave without it. And the doctor can't explain why. Right? You don't need Benny Hinn's coat to do that. Sometimes that just happens. And whether you can explain it away with science or not, it's still a miracle. Right? It doesn't change that. So, yeah. All right. A little church history. A couple of church history questions. Is Easter a pagan holiday? So, I get this all the time, Bishop. All the time. Especially like on TikTok. I get this. Well, Easter is actually, the goddess Eostre, which was a fertility goddess, and that's why there's bunnies and all this other stuff. Christians stole the holiday. I'm here to tell you this. There is no evidence, biblical, archaeological, or anthropological, that Easter is in any way connected to the deity Eostre. Right? The only connection is they sound the same. That's it. We have one reference to Eostre in history. One reference, and it's from a Christian monk who said that Easter is celebrated during the month of Eostre, which happened to be named after this goddess. That's it. That's the only connection. bunny rabbits, this whole, fertility thing, that actually comes from a medieval belief with brown bunnies. So I don't know if you know this. Look it up if you don't believe me. Brown bunnies have the ability to be pregnant and get pregnant again before they have the first set of babies. Right?
You just traumatized all women on the
I know.
Good job. We just lost the audience.
Yeah, there they go. Bye. It was nice seeing y'all. Bye, First Lady. But what they believed is that because they didn't understand science then, they believed that this second litter was a virgin birth. And so they would refer to these brown bunnies as having the ability to have virgin children, right? Be able to have babies as a virgin or without sex, right? That's where bunnies enter the scene. Eggs enter the scene because that was the typical food that peasants used to break their Lent fast. It's the only reason eggs show up. And they would color them and give them to like monks or kings or as gifts. That's where all that comes from. This idea that we somehow stole. Now, don't get me wrong. We've stole tons of stuff from paganism. If you look at how most churches are set up with an altar, with the preacher sits up front and everybody else sits, that all comes from Roman and Greek, how they set up their churches, right, or their places of worship. I'm not here to say that we haven't amalgamated that stuff. We have, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's okay. But Easter is not one of those things. I would challenge you. I would challenge anyone to show me a primary source that actually links Eostre to Easter. They don't match. And Ishtar, if you ever want to get into that, that's a whole other thing. Not true either. Completely not true. So is Easter a pagan holiday? No.
Isn't it a festival?
So,
one of the festivals.
So it was a. There were festivals in the month of Eostre, but they weren't specifically for the goddess. As a matter of fact, Christians in this one primary source, it literally says that the feasts of Easter were carried out in the month of Eostre, right? And so some neo-pagans from the 1880s on took that to mean that we stole those feasts and made them Christian. And that's just not true. Maybe it's true, but we have no evidence for that.
Why do we call it Easter?
So we call it Easter because that is an anglicized version of the word Pesach, which means Passover. Yeah. Right? It's really what Easter is. It's not a pagan holiday. It is a reimagination of the Passover. And the reason we celebrate it when we do, this is actually very fascinating, has everything to do with Jesus allegedly being born on December 25th, right? So there was a belief in the ancient times that people would die on the day they were conceived, right? So what's 9 months back from December? March, right? Or March or April, that time frame. And so the belief was that Jesus had to, because Jesus was born on December 25th, which we know isn't true, that he had to have been conceived 9 months before that, and that had to be the day of his death. And so that's why we celebrate Easter at the time we do. It actually has like no bearing in science or no bearing in like when Jesus was actually crucified. It has everything to do with these calculations that they did in the first century.
You know what? I don't know, but it's all these holidays been monetized.
Exactly.
And made about suits and rabbits and eggs and colors and things like that. When it's and that's the issue.
Yeah, that's the real problem.
We just celebrate everything. The holiday is bigger than the reason why the holiday is needs to be celebrated. And that's the problem with it. Yeah. Instead of being pagan.
Exactly.
Capitalism, commercialization of things is the problem.
Yeah, you're so hyper-focused on does it have pagan roots? Well, I mean, I have a Christmas tree in my house every year. That's pagan.
Some people only go to church on Easter.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Feel good. That's not doing no good. I mean,
right.
Okay, but
just don't go. I mean, if you don't, I'm not going to knock you if you choose to go or not to go. Yeah. I'm just saying if you think that it has some sort of like supernatural power or cleansing ability, no, it doesn't. If you do it out of family tradition, I mean, that's fine. You do you.
But you're just doing tradition.
But that's why you're doing it. You're not doing it out of some obligation. You know what I mean? So is Easter a pagan holiday? No, it's not. It's actually a Jewish holiday that we took over. Now, this last one's really interesting. I want to get your take on it before I say anything. It says, how can we be Christians when we deny the resurrection? So there's a lot to unpack in that question, but I just kind of want to get what's your first response when you hear that statement.
Well, I'm in the days of that I've come through by doing research for all these books that I'm really not even defining myself as a Christian these days. I have to find myself more of a follower of Christ. So I'm not really trying to be a Christian, because to me that word, in this particular end, my view of life and my American experience has been so watered down, butchered. I would ask, what is a Christian in the United States of America these days? And a lot of people say they are. I'm like, wow, okay. For me, like I did Sunday, it's all of the resurrection is, and I think with my research of the book, that story has been trampled over and told wrong and celebrated wrong. I just know over too. I mean, the resurrection is for me, it's beyond Christian. I'm thinking that it's just my hope. It's the hope that he did rise, because if he didn't, then I have a problem. That's why it was so important that Mary was the first one to see him, was the first one to pass the message that I've seen the Lord. Right. It means he lived and he overcame death for me. But I don't believe now in this space I'm in my life that Christianity is tied to the resurrection. Like I think people are saying in their minds, because I'm just looking at Christianity like, what are we doing? In other words, going back to confessions, if a pastor calls himself a Christian, can sit up there and let a person be abused and say nothing because how am I not? I don't. I'm not in your. I'm not in that box with you. Because I don't.
For me, and I'd like to be the first one to welcome you to the I don't consider myself a Christian group.
Well, I'm just saying I am looking
label.
I'm looking at the label. The label. I'm not tying myself to the label anymore.
Yeah. And so that welcome. It's the water's warm. Come on in. I would say for me. I have stopped calling myself a Christian, because it's almost as if the word Christian is like this inherited thing that you get from your parents. Right? My parents are Christian. My parents are Catholics. I went to Catholic.
We're a Christian nation.
We're a Christian nation.
That was the first show, right?
It's now an identity, and it's something that we just get by being born.
Yes.
And that is not how Christianity was meant to work, right? So I like to call myself a follower of the way of Jesus Christ, right? Because that implies that I have work to do. I actually have to follow the path, the journey, the way, right? So, that's what I refer to myself as. And I would just say this about this comment. Do I deny the resurrection? And actually, I stole this from someone. Can't remember his first name. His last name is Menenga. And he actually had this to say. He said, do I deny the resurrection of Jesus Christ? Yes, I do. Every time I fail to help the sick, every time I walk by the poor, every time I don't stand up for a child, I deny the resurrection. Do I acknowledge the resurrection? Yes, I do. Right? I do that when I help the sick, feed the poor, stand up for the abused, right? Do justice, those things. And what he said really resonated with me, because what that means is what I believe does not make me a follower of the way. What I do, my actions, cause me to deny or accept the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So, when someone says, how can you be a Christian and deny the resurrection? I can say, well, when I sin as a follower of the way, if, and I'm guilty, I do this, I've done this. Someone asks me for money on the street and I just keep walking. I've done that before. And in that moment, I have denied the resurrection, right? Because I'm not doing what I was commanded to do, right? To me, denying or accepting resurrection and following Christ, the more I study, the more it's occurring to me that it's not about simple belief. I can believe anything. I can believe in unicorns, right? My belief does not make me a follower of Christ. My actions, because of my beliefs, make me an actual follower of the Christ. So for me, resurrection my denial or acceptance of the resurrection has everything to do with what I do with my God-given gifts.
Yeah.
Because I can say, I mean, people believe in Jesus all over this country and do nothing for the poor, don't care about justice, just want their money, leave me alone, right? How can that be Christ-like? It can't, right? It's not compatible. So for me, that's where I sit with the resurrection.
Well, I got a very controversial take, and this one
Oh, I'm excited. Everybody's going to hang up now.
We talk about the resurrection, take Christianity out of the pure resurrection. I would tell these pastors, these leaders of these churches that I grew up in, I'm talking to them particularly, that if you say a woman can't do nothing, then you don't believe in the resurrection.
No, you don't.
Because my belief system, this in the Bible, Jesus first spoke to Mary, a woman, and told her what to do. She was apostle to the apostles.
That's right.
So
The
therefore,
first apostle.
you don't believe in the resurrection because she was the one that told them,
That's right.
men who's hiding, that I've seen the Lord and He lives.
Yep.
That's the first resurrection testimony. There's no greater preaching than Mary. There's no greater message. I mean, you can study all the theological books you want to. We'll never have a message like that.
Nope. He's risen and meant it.
Your celebrity preacher won't, and it came through the mouth of a woman.
That's right.
Ordained, commissioned by Jesus Himself, not Paul, not Peter, not all. Jesus Himself, who was the risen one, with scars, told her to go do this.
Yeah.
So you can't believe, man,
Yep.
in the resurrection without then sit down on a woman, because it was through the mouth of a woman
That's right.
that the resurrection, we know it's a resurrection.
That's right. Well, since we're doing unpopular takes, I got one too. I can't be outdone by you, brother. I gotta give my unpopular take. Mary has more right to apostleship than Paul.
Mary is apostle to the apostle. There is no greater preacher, no greater apostle besides Jesus. Look, beyond Jesus, there's no greater apostle. She is the apostle to the apostle. She is the greatest evangelist, the greatest preacher, because she is why you have a so-called Christian faith, if you want to call it that, because she's the one that said that He commissioned. And further, think about that. He had to have a relationship with Mary, and it wasn't sexual.
Yep.
It was disciples, like the other ones, with her to commission her with that great momentous task. Remember, I know, but I tell my kids all the time, there was no breaking news. Peter behind in the room, right? Live from Mount Calvary. This man Jesus, who last week came through Jerusalem, who hailed Hosanna, Hosanna, and a week later, Jesus Christ, see three crosses up there? Jesus Christ, who they was hailing, the King of Kings, is on the cross with Pilate, our governor, there was no, Peter them seeing that.
Yep.
She was the breaking news.
That's right.
She was the one that says, the tomb was more than empty. I have seen the Lord, and He has spoken to me, and now He told me to go tell y'all the meeting where He said it's going to be.
Yep.
So she is, and she was not a person who was just following Jesus carelessly. Think about that. She was just a casual observer around you. For that, He had to know her.
Yeah. Remember that God does know everything?
To
you
trust
think God
her
didn't pick
with this message?
who was going to be first?
He had to trust her.
Yeah.
With this. So it's notion that she was just some. I mean, you talking about the man on the street passing with the money. Would you go tell him to give a great task? You might give him $1, but you gonna tell him, hey, go make sure you're not because you don't know him.
Right. Right.
So, resurrection man. How can any man among us say what a woman can't do?
That's right. That's right.
She is a resurrection. Our friend like this on Sunday. Our friend like this, we go to plays, right? Mm-hmm. There's for the resurrection story. There's only on plays. When the star leaves the stage, you don't think about it, but subconsciously you do. And I finally read this book. When is the star going to come back on the stage? When the star leaves the stage, because you want to see the star because they're the star of the show.
Right.
Well, in this story, there's 2 stars on the stage. Mm-hmm. Not Mary and Peter. Not Jesus and Peter. But Jesus and Mary.
Yep. That's right.
And so he did it by accident? That was coincidence?
Yep.
But now men can tell you what you can do, what message you can.
Yep.
You can carry the message that gave us the greatest news ever, but you can't preach a sermon?
Yeah, when I deny a woman a pulpit, I deny the resurrection. And there it is. And yeah, you can be mad at me all you want, but the fact of the matter is, Mary has more pedigree to apostleship than Paul does. Paul met Jesus post. Not during, not before. Yeah. Met him post. I'm not saying Paul's not important. I'm not saying Paul didn't have the Damascus experience. I'm simply pointing out that if Peter is an apostle and Paul is an apostle, Mary has to be an apostle too. That's all I'm saying.
And the reason why they're placed where they are, because it's a whole other topic, is because of patriarchy.
That's right.
And angel sent, because of how the Bible was written. Who controlled
the narrative?
And it was men.
That's exactly right. Men like Paul. I don't want to hear that, but that's just reality. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, thanks for the questions tonight. Really great. Really good, thought-provoking questions, and that's good. That's what we want. We always want to provoke thought and make people uncomfortable, even ourselves sometimes. So thanks for tuning in. And
Judge FJ with tonight.
Yeah, I saw Miss FJ, Miss Jada.
Appreciate it.
First Lady, of course. First Lady. So thanks for stopping by, and until next time, we'll see you.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Bishop Brothers. Make sure to visit our page, Bishop Brothers, where you can like and follow so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, please tell a friend about the show. The brothers salute you. Until we meet again, Godspeed.